Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 268th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget the podcast is now fortnightly, but if you're missing out on weekly content, then don't worry because you have 5 years worth of podcasts to reflect back on. And if you want my handy guide that lists all the episodes with a clickable link, you can get this at bit.ly/DMPG23. Okay, so last episode, I talked about how to handle, deal with, or manage gatekeepers. This episode, as we go towards the end of the Gregorian year, is about how workplace wellbeing enables inclusion, as I thought it would be a good place to start to draw the year to a close. Too often, workplaces see inclusion and well-being as separate things and have separate work streams. In fact, we may even see inclusion sitting in one team and well-being in another. But of course, the two, I think, are inextricably linked. As always, let's look at definitions. Well-being, of course, is a broad concept that's strongly linked to happiness and life satisfaction. It is potentially a combination of a person's physical, mental, emotional, and social factors that combine to give an overall picture of being well or a well person. And I often think of it as an umbrella with different raindrops coming off it to show the different areas. In the UK, the Department of Health state that well-being is defined as a state of mind and body that is positive and is supported by social and psychological well-being. It is a resource for daily life that enables and supports good relationships, improved resilience, and improved health. So now that also sounds like when you have a positive workplace, you're going to feel all those things. And the other point about wellbeing that I wanted to touch on, and if you've listened to previous episodes, you might have heard me talk about this as well, is the Rath and Harter research from 2010 that looks at 5 different wellbeing categories. So we've got career wellbeing, how you occupy your time, or simply liking what you do every day, whether it's a traditional role or not. So let's think about volunteering, taking part in community events, any retirement activities, really being able to do, enjoying what you're doing. Social well-being, having strong relationships and love in your life. And by love, we're talking about all the different types of love. We're not simply talking about heteronormative love, connection in essence. So connections with friends, families, siblings, could be romantic love, your pets, etc. Financial well-being, effectively managing your economic life, and of course, work or any money-generating things are going to have a positive impact on that. Physical well-being, having good health and enough energy to get things done on a daily basis. And there is a little bit of an ableist slant to that. So what I will say is that also, I think physical well-being is being able to use your body in the way that you want to and having an accessibility or mobility aids that help you to do that. Community well-being, the sense of engagement you have with the area where you live. So we can see that well-being is broad and we can also bring it down to the 5 areas. And of course, work is going to link into career well-being, financial well-being, potentially community well-being as well, because we have a community in the workplace, or ideally it's really nice to have a community in the workplace. Okay, so what about inclusion then? Well, this is my definition because inclusion refers to an individual's experience within their own workplace and also society at large. So the extent to which someone feels valued and included, so that could be where they live in society and in the workplace, is also going to improve their well-being. And in organizations, inclusion celebrates, nurtures, and appreciates diversity and builds strong teams. Inclusion is about our talents and the way we can use them to create new things or solve problems. And of course, we know that when we feel a bit stretched in a positive, supportive environment, that's really good for our well-being. So for me, I hope that shows the link between how well-being enables inclusion and how also if we feel included, that's going to help our well-being, and they are not separate things. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of this podcast so far and have listened to lots of my episodes over the past 5 years. If you want to keep up to date, then why not join my newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you receive my white paper on inclusive language and mental health. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. So how can we then start thinking about well-being and inclusion together? What are the things that we might need to do in the workplace? And so I think the first thing is to understand the unique needs of your employees. So If you want to create an inclusive workplace that supports well-being, you have to recognize you have different people, different groups with different needs. Employees that you classify as underrepresented or less well represented, whatever that means for your organization, are going to therefore face some certain challenges that are likely to affect physical health, maybe, or mental health, emotional health. This could be microaggressions, macroaggressions, unconscious bias, not so unconscious bias, and of course, a lack of access to tailored wellbeing solutions. So, in order to do this, I would say look at your surveys that you already have. I don't think it's about creating new ones. Also, you might want to talk to managers about one-to-one conversations they've had with their team without betraying any confidentiality to really understand the barriers that employees, staff, teams are facing. Now, of course, not everything is in control of an organization. We just had the budget, and as many of you know, I'm not very happy about the budget, and I think the long-term implications of it are going to be really difficult. And we can't always oversee or press the override button on everything. But I think as a start, it's really important to know the kinds of barriers that employees are facing that may be very different to your own or things that you've not thought about. So this insight, first things first, and why I talk about this will allow you to create wellbeing initiatives that will meet the diverse needs of your team. And also it tailors it. So it's not just a one size fits all. And I think it communicates a message that their wellbeing and their particular requirements and needs matter to the organization. Then the second thing, and you'll have heard me talk about this before in podcast episode 245, what is psychological safety at work? Well, this is a key tenet, really, I think, to this whole part of ensuring that good well-being creates an inclusive environment. So psychological safety is the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up in the workplace. So in fact, you could actually swap my first point with the second point. You might actually want to put creating a culture of psychological safety first. So it could be speaking up about ideas, questions, concerns, voicing your needs, or letting your employees, staff, team members voice their needs. And it's about the shared expectations that team colleagues will not embarrass, reject, or punish anyone for expressing their ideas, unless, of course, they are against the law or their hate speech. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're actually talking about, I'm not sure I agree with that, or actually I felt really left out when there wasn't an option for vegans at the Christmas lunch. And that's a very sort of simplistic example, but that kind of thing. And it is about working together in the best possible way. So, of course, when employees and people can express their ideas, concerns, or challenges without fear of judgment or retribution, this is going to increase engagement and productivity. My third point is about providing access to inclusive wellbeing resources. And I think point one, again, is really important to this because you need to know your landscape. So once you know your landscape, your wellbeing solutions should reflect a variety of cultural requirements. So one size fits all approaches fall short. And we see this in particular when, there's no conversations for miscarriage or baby loss for men, women, non-binary people. That's an example. Or it's, very, very specific, or it has to be on a case-by-case basis. And there has layers and layers of people that need to access to support this. That's not very helpful. So it's all about offering a range of wellbeing resources. So this can be adequate training for managers, which includes conversations on culture and race equity, straightforward, flexible policies and arrangements that look at things like caring responsibilities for elder dependents and younger dependents. It can also be around flexible working arrangements for managing long-term health conditions, which are, of course, covered under the Equality Act. And ensuring your employee assistance program includes access to culturally competent therapists so that employees can receive the specific support they need. And if you want to know more, please check out podcast episode 248, Cultural Preferences for Mental Health Recovery, podcast episode 142, How Racism Creates Mental Ill Health, and podcast number 8, which is Black Mental Health, How to Engage Your Staff. And then fourthly, it's about promoting a work-life blend for all. So we know, and work-life balance, you might have heard it as well. It's the same thing. I just call it work-life blend because I think balance can be a bit of a tricky word, actually, but is a key part in maintaining workplace well-being. But we know that people will have different preferences, and some people really enjoy working a lot, and some people just want to do their job and go home. And of course, if people have caregiving responsibilities, they're looking after their own well-being and their health or other personal commitments, they need to be heard and supported. And this will encompass remote working, flexible hours, agile working, compressed hours, anything that creates an accessible environment. Because this shows employees that their personal circumstances are valued and respected. And of course, if that's happening, we're going to get better well-being and we're going to get better inclusion as a result. Okay, now the fifth thing is fun. I hope you agree with me. It's about celebrating and leveraging employee diversity. So we're thinking about a truly inclusive workplace. We're not just talking about using diversity glibly, putting it out there, saying, "Oh, isn't diversity great?" And this is the way that we're going to solve all the issues in the world. But it is about the recognition of cultural holidays, celebrating awareness days, and actually making change from that. So it could be we're doing Mental Health Awareness Week. And then what's the legacy of that? We're not just going to have a flash in the pan event. We need to think about how our systems, our processes, our policies are supporting people in a holistic way. And also offering platforms for employees to share their experiences can really help build a strong sense of inclusion and belonging within a team. And we know that when employees feel included and celebrated for who they are, it reinforces their connection to an organization and positively impacts their well-being. And to learn more about that, check out episode 25, How to Organize Mental Health Awareness Events. And then number 6 is about encouraging peer support and allyship. Again, allyship has been an overused word, but of course, peer support is a really key part of fostering good working relationships. And encouraging employees to act as allies, creating support networks within an organization builds a culture of solidarity and also coalition. This is a really great word about people coming together, coalescing to make the workplace better, to understand one another better, to have a culture of empathy. Now, that could be formally through employee resource groups or staff networks. It could be informal peer mentorships. It could be very official mentorship programs. But these connections can provide employees with a sense of community and belonging, essential for mental and emotional well-being. So it goes back to that point around community, the community in which you're operating in, living in, and how that contributes to well-being. And of course, if there's more allyship and people speaking up and supporting one another, this is going to create a more inclusive workplace. And this is one of the cornerstones of how inclusive workplaces can enable good well-being. And for more about allyship, check out episode number 41, all about genuine allyship, where I also talk about my lived experience of allyship or not having had allyship, actually. Okay, and then number 7 is about monitoring and measuring well-being outcomes. So something that's not always easy because it can be a journey, not a final destination. But I think from the outset to think about what are the parameters and what is the data that you could capture. Now, this is helpful for your key performance indicators. This is helpful for annual reporting. This is helpful if you have a board of trustees or board of directors. But continuous monitoring really also helps. I think it's imperative for the effectiveness of strategies, because again, it's very easy to create projects left, right, and center, but it's crucial to make sure that the goals you've set are being met. So we're going back to the point at the beginning. We can use employee feedback. And if you have pulse surveys, if you have very large staff surveys that happen once every 3 years, use them, analyze any well-being surveys you have. Now, often when we think of surveys, we think of someone centrally, or you work with a specialized organization that will send out the information. But surveys can also be very light touch. We can ask managers to have conversations in team meetings and one-to-one and just give them a quick way to capture things qualitatively and use those quotes. That is actually very powerful. And also looking at the uptake of wellbeing initiatives to see what's working well and where the gaps are. And I know hybrid working, I know since lockdown and COVID, people don't want to go to face-to-face events that much, unless maybe it's really exciting, there might be some celebrities or freebies. And so what are the ways in which you might want to shift things or do things differently? And this data will help you assess how well your initiatives are working and where improvements can be made. And also this helps you to adapt your approach and ensure that your wellbeing solutions remain relevant, inclusive, and effective for everyone. And do check out episode 188, Top 5 Inclusion Mistakes, for more on data. And finally, I've done a lot of work around this, obviously, over the last 7+ years of running my business. So the connection between inclusive workplaces and wellbeing is what it's all about. And the reason that Diverse Mind centers on this is because I saw the gap and I saw what was happening or not happening, actually. And I also developed the Mentally Healthy Professional online course. So this course is great if you're an individual. It's just 4 simple modules to look at your work-life blend. So it links into point 4, and it's meant to be very straightforward. And once again, if this is a subject that you'd like to know more about, don't forget that I run workshops, training sessions, and keynotes for organizations all about creating positive, happy, equal, mentally well, and inclusive workplaces. So do get in touch with me to find out more. It's Leyla, Leyla at diverseminds.co.uk. But in essence, we know there are lots of elements of well-being that link to inclusion and lots of elements of inclusion that will enhance well-being. So I really hope you've enjoyed today's episodes and the shows over the last 5 years. If so, why not write me a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast from. I'd also love to hear from you. So if you want to leave me an anonymous voice note or with your name, you can do so at SpeakPipe, and that link is bit.ly/spkpdmp. And of course, don't forget, if you want to know more about my own journey, you can check out my TEDx talk in your break because it's just 12 minutes long. And the link is bit.ly/TEDx Wolves, WOLVESLO. And if you did enjoy it because it was a labor of love, please leave a positive comment on YouTube, share and like. And as always, don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'm now on Blue Sky. So do at Diverse Minds UK. And do join me in a fortnight's time where I'll be recapping over my year. And the resources for this episode is the Department of Health PDF, the Rath and Harter research about the 5 essential wellbeing elements, blog post on how inclusive workplaces can enable good wellbeing. And in there, I list all the podcast episodes that I referred to in this show. So take care, everyone. And I hope you will join me in the Roundup show, which will be coming up on Christmas Eve to find out about the year. I'd love to hear about your plans, how your year's been. So as always, do keep in touch and take care and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.